Okay, welcome everybody to our second webinar in our series. This webinar is very exciting to me. We are going to talk about managing in times of crisis and have some of the phenomenal leaders who are joining us here today talk with us about a glimpse into the future. So I am very excited to have the opportunity to ask questions to and talk with the panel that you're seeing in front of you today. And welcome to all of our attendees. I do want to note that we are missing one panelist. She cannot join because unfortunately she lost a family member to COVID-19 this past weekend. So she won't be with us today, and I'm sure we can all just take a moment and appreciate our health and how we're doing today. And if any of you are experiencing family-related issues to COVID-19, we're sending our sympathies, and we're especially glad you're here with us today. And on that note, before we jump into our topic, those of you who know me know that I have my oldest son, who's an ER doctor in New York, and his friends and his girlfriend, who's an ER doctor in the Bronx, have told me that one of the things that they need are goggles or face shields that don't fog up. And we've been told, and they're using in the ER, ski goggles. So if anybody has ski goggles that they are not using, I'm putting together a couple of big boxes of them to ship to those ERs. And following this meeting, when we send out our slides and our link to the video, we'll put a ship to address in there, and I'll put these all together and send them out to ERs because we don't want our doctors looking through foggy goggles during this difficult time. So thanks for that, and thanks for being here. I have an esteemed panel, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They represent a breadth of industries, categories, and expertise. And as I said, I'm so thankful to have them here today. Thanks, guys, and let's start with Herbie.
Hi, thanks, Lisa. So Herbie Calvis, I'm the president of MYXFitness, MYXFitness. We're a newcomer to the connected at-home fitness technology space, which is, hardware in the home connected through, the internet to content, expert coaches coming into your home. My background is really going back to the 90s, starting out in account management and media planning and some traditional agencies, Ogilvy, Y&R. Then moving into consumer packaged goods, and then into consumer durables and electronics. Worked at Reckitt Benckiser in New Jersey, as well as Timex Group in Connecticut, and then through the American Kennel Club for a tech startup similar to MYXFitness, which had a hardware and a service plan SaaS model kind of associated with it as well. It was a connected product for dogs, wearables for dogs.
Herbie, can you just take a minute and tell us what's happening on your business right now?
So right now it's, very interesting time. I mean, when I say a newcomer, we literally unveiled the product just before Thanksgiving, Black Friday weekend in November of 19. We were in pre-orders for a couple of months, very strong, successful pre-order period. And then we started actually dealing with and managing through the COVID-19 crisis in January as things were starting to change in China for us. And we were trying to chase demand for the strong pre-order season that we had, and we started shipping in January. And it hasn't stopped since then, as the supply chain issues kind of cascaded from China into the rest of our supply chain around the world. Then the demand started to increase in the United States at the same time. So good problems to have in many ways in light of this pandemic for our business, and we're chasing even more inventory right now. So that's kind of the big thing that we're dealing with. In addition to being a startup, and there's a lot of things that we're, still ironing out and getting processes in place and back-end issues and resolved and getting ready. Our plan initially was really just to use the first 8 months of this year, and it still really is the plan to get ready for holiday 2020 and the first quarter of 21. So we're doing that, but we're also trying to meet the demand now and get our product out there and continue to get good reviews from the media and from consumers that we're able to get units to.
Excellent. So everybody wants to exercise at home. We also know everybody wants to be healthy. So I'm going to go to Lisa to talk about her background and what's happening on her business right now.
Thanks, Lisa. I lead the business for GSK Consumer Healthcare. It's a health and wellness organization, one of the largest OTC manufacturers in the United States and Puerto Rico, and have been in the industry for over 25 years and have really never seen anything, quite on this scale and magnitude. It's been an environment for us where we also had some early signals. We have some products that are very proactive in nature, and for people who are very wellness minded, we also saw some of the very early demand signals, and we also treat the symptoms of things that people are suffering from related to COVID, and we have seen extreme demands on those types of products as well. We've been managing a range of things that remained normal, everything from some channels up 10x to what we're used to, or sometimes just 100% increase. But either way, on very short timelines, and really trying to make sure that we're assessing all of that. And look forward to talking with the group today.
Thanks, Lisa. And Bill, in a related category, can you talk about your experience?
Sure. So similar to Lisa, I've sort of spent the last 25 years in consumer packaged goods, consumer healthcare companies like J&J, Warner Lambert, and Pfizer. But for the last 12 years, I've been working in a smaller, more entrepreneurial setting. So I work for Ricola, and I'm the regional president for the Americas in the UK. My boss is the grandson of the founder. So we're not quite at the early startup stage that Herbie's at. We were there about 85 years ago, but we're still family owned. And this has been a fascinating time. Actually, we'll talk some more later about how we adapt. I actually am looking more into some of my experience from the military in terms of how I do contingency planning, and how if you have one plan, you have no plan. You need at least 4 plans, because we're going through some really strange times. Our factory is in Switzerland, but most of our employees who work in our factory live in either Germany or France, and now they've closed the borders. So we've actually suspended operations for 3 weeks just to allow for stabilization of people moving back and forth across the borders. At least here in the U.S., we do all the packaging. They do all the production of the bulk product. So before they closed the facility in Switzerland, we had about 2-3 month head start. We saw this hit like Herbie did in China first, and close our office in China. So they put literally millions of tons of Ricola drops on the water. So we have plenty of product to carry us through, assuming they start back up. But it's fascinating to watch this wave pass through country after country.
Thank you, Bill. And I think we will talk a little bit about what military experience has done to help you learn how to manage in times of crisis. Because as we're seeing in New York and New Jersey, there's a call for military leadership and a trust in the processes that the military have developed for a lot of parties. Rodney, you're coming at it from a very different perspective. Can you talk first about your background, and then the luxury market as a whole, and then your business?
Sure. So like Bill, I also come from a consumer products background, Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson. I worked on the launch of OnStar for General Motors before coming out to California for the wine business in Napa and Sonoma. And I have been a part of Moet Hennessy for the last 8 years, and presently head up the Belvedere Vodka business. And Belvedere is sold in 120 countries. Our headquarters are here in New York, but the distillery is actually in Żarłota, Poland, about 45 minutes outside of Warsaw. And we're part of LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, and we are maybe the only major operation that is still going right now. The company is shut down on the fashion and the retail side, and even within our business, because of Brexit and potential tariffs against champagne and cognac. They produced lots of inventory before we did. We didn't have the need to do that on Belvedere. What's been fascinating for us is that Poland moved to containment very rapidly and early. So they have very few incidents so far of death, even though they're able to test increasingly rapidly for positive folks. So we're able to operate, but of course, with restaurants and pubs closed across the world, it's had a deleterious impact on our business. And I too find it fascinating how our key markets around the world are responding, some the same, some quite differently to the crisis. So looking forward to this discussion.
Thanks. And I will tell the audience that I was lucky enough to have a pre-prep call with this team, and we learned a lot from each other just in sharing experiences. So that was great for me too, and we'll share some of that information in my next few questions. So Todd, if I could ask you to introduce yourself, you could ditto all of us in original background, and talk about your business, which, like the luxury business, is in a little bit different place. Then I'm going to put up a poll, which I forgot to put up, and ask everybody to take that for us. And then we're going to jump into some of the Q&A.
Great. Hi, I'm Todd Magazine, the CEO of MYXFitness. We have about 110 locations nationwide. We are sister business to Equinox Fitness and SoulCycle, which I mentioned that partly because that's been a huge benefit to us through this process, because Equinox and SoulCycle play in a very different business, obviously fitness, but luxury. We play in the value segment, but we've been learning from one another. It's been a very interesting experience. The one thing I want to say, I hope everybody is safe and healthy. And just, to note, I knew the young lady, not so young anymore, but Karuna,
yes,
who was supposed to
my
be
age, she's young.
We're all young.
Yeah.
Karuna, who lost her mother-in-law, unfortunately, can't be on the panel. We got a note this morning that somebody on our team lost their grandfather. We have a franchisee who was sick. So obviously this is touching all of us, and, really unfortunate. But, for us, we shut all of our locations on March 16th. 110 locations were shut. So we have no revenue right now. So, our focus is obviously on cash preservation and trying to figure out what do we do when we have the chance to reopen. The other part that I think might be interesting to people that we've talked is we've actually been learning from fitness companies in Asia, because they are in a very different part of the timeline. They're now coming out of the kind of bell curve of the kind of crisis, and they're starting to open up their businesses. And so we're learning a lot from them about the experience of opening gyms in a still very much a COVID environment, where there's still social distancing and there's still kind of groups are limited in terms of quantity. So a lot to be learned from other markets and other companies who are maybe a little bit ahead from us, but obviously a very challenging time for us.
Thanks. I think that's going to be one of our big takeaways, is to learn from each other, analog industries, and other regions and countries to better anticipate things. It sounds like most of you were able to get a handle on things early. Lots of businesses were not, and were caught blindsided by the stoppage of business. Riel, can I ask you to put up our poll, and can I ask the attendees to take a moment and answer these? This will help give us a quick temperature of the folks who are watching. If you guys could answer these, and are we going to see the results? Populate the results so we can see them? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So if you're currently, how concerned are you about the future stability of your company? My guess is there will be few that aren't concerned, but I'm curious, where are you guys? Can we close the poll and see what we're looking at?
Yep, we just have a few more people trickling in that are getting their answers in. Okay. For those of you who didn't vote also, please note that the poll will pop up in a separate little box on your screen. So if you are having difficulty finding it, just try to minimize your Zoom browser and you should see it on your screen. Okay, I'm gonna end this poll.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna share.
Okay, so not surprisingly, everybody is at least somewhat concerned, although it's a pretty high number on neutral right now. a lot of uncertainty, and then third, very concerned. One of the things we're going to talk about when we get to the glimpse of the future is, what do we think is going to happen as we recover? How fast, and what might it mean for our businesses and others? Okay, let's do the next. This is for students as well as people who are currently working. And I know we have a lot of students and also some teachers on the call today. Are you posting it?
It should be up. Can everybody see it or no?
Nope.
Let me redo it.
My little poll icon at the bottom isn't showing. There we go.
Yeah.
This is something we're going to talk about very shortly, communication. Okay, show us the results if you can.
Okay.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Just the right amount is over half, but there's a good chunk of people who feel like they're not getting enough. And there are some companies, and I even heard some healthcare organizations, hospitals, where their staff do not feel like they're getting enough quality communication. Okay, close that one and let's do our last.
Okay.
Are we supposed to be seeing the next poll? Because I'm
I
still
just
seeing.
launched it. Did you see it or no?
No, I'm still seeing the results of the last poll. All right, and if we can't get it, we can just keep going, okay? So we'll keep going. We won't launch that one now. And I'm gonna go to Lisa. And one of the things that we talked about in our prep call, and by the way, if you have a question for Lisa Paley, just put Lisa P. If you have a question for me, put Lisa K. We talked a lot about people and people first mentality, and everybody on your screen said loud and clear that was a priority. But I know at GSK you're especially focused on that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think, you know, because it is such a humanitarian situation that we're in, the first and best thing we can do is stay focused and available for our colleagues and people that we need to support in our personal lives as well. And we've been taking a lot of care to make sure that we are, although not together, that we are remaining visible. And we've been communicating in a number of different forums for people, and really trying to create a listening mechanism as well. So we're doing that in a couple different ways. We've been out with video. We've been in high touch communication via obviously WebEx, which everybody is using, and Zooms and all of those things. And we're using all means. So whatever channel they need to communicate with us in right now, we're open to that. And we're also making voices heard across our organization. And so we're finding ways, as much as we need to support colleagues, for colleagues to support others. And so we're looking at opportunities to come together around our essential workers, and really offer, you know, some really cool support for the people that are in plants and in R&D labs that are still trying to help, you know, the future. We've been really quick and agile on some new survey type of things, so we can keep a pulse on individuals and where they're at. So we'll be launching one of these in the coming week, and we literally made that decision within minutes and can activate it. It has some AI, so we can get a really quick pulse and stay in tune with the organization. So, you know, we feel good about it. I don't know if, you know, if everything lands, it doesn't land the same way with everybody depending on what they're experiencing. And I think what we're finding is make communication available in many different ways so that when they're ready and they need the information, they can easily get it from you. And those are some of the things that we've been doing, but high touch, lots of time with teams and lots of dialogue around the topic.
And that's not an easy thing in an organization as big as yours. But high touch was a theme that I heard from others as well. And I know that asking questions And listening is also hard if you're a CEO of a company with thousands of people reporting to you. So I think the survey is an interesting idea. We do a team meeting on a rating scale 1 to 5 every week for everybody around the world. That's working for now. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten below a 3.5, but I anticipate we might, and then we'll have to address that. Does anybody else want to talk about how they're dealing with their people? Raise your hand if you do physically, and so I can say Herbie, and then Ryan.
I could just briefly, you know, it's almost the opposite end of a GlaxoSmithKline, or, you know, it's such a large organization. We're small, you know, it's about, you know, just around 50 people that are touching and working on our startup, you know, getting it going. And a good portion of them are contractors. You know, in the fitness industry in general, it kind of, you know, as Todd can speak to, there's a lot of trainers and coaches and people that are not necessarily always full-time employees. For us in particular, we have that with our talent, on camera talent, as well as some of the folks involved on the production side of things. You know, cameramen and hair and makeup and things like that. So, you know, we're trying the best we can, again, as a startup, and managing cash like everybody else here. Our investors, our cash, you know, not all their investments are doing as well from a sales perspective as our business is. So we have to be cognizant of that and manage cash very carefully. And it's got to go to inventory right now. But still trying to do the best we can to try to help our team. You know, there's different projects and different work that we do need in the preparation for the future. So, and through all that, a lot of what's been said already, being transparent, communicating, over communicating, and making sure people see what's on the other side of this in the context of our business. You know, the positive messages, I think people really need that, especially everybody's isolated at home, you know, and trying to figure out what's next, and wondering what's happening with Mix. It's a startup. Oh my goodness, it's a startup. Even though it's selling, it's a start, you know. So that's one of the things to try to keep, you know, the positive outlook for everybody. I think is critical to help people get through. Right now, I'm like, let's get through the month of April. You know, everybody's kind of going to be boarded up in the month of April. Let's make sure they're keeping their positive mindsets going. So I think that's critical.
I'm going to go to Rodney, then I'll come to you, Todd.
Yeah, just a quick build, because I agree very much with Lisa and Herbie. We're trying to do those things as well. We've sped up the all hands meetings where we normally do them once a month to weekly. But, you know, we recognize we have a number of young single people in our organization. So we started these Friday virtual happy hours. And I was a little nervous. People might get carried away. But in fact, people really appreciated the outlet just to talk, and not about work, not about how the business is performing or the world is imploding, but really just to be connected again back to people.
Rodney, what did you guys serve at your virtual?
Just gonna ask that.
What beverage did you serve? I can't think of
Belvedere Martini.
Oh, what a surprise! What a surprise!
We had the Belvedere Air. We had a Belvedere meal. I mean, we had you covered, Todd. You should have been there.
I wish I could have
we'll post those recipes when we send out the notes and the links. So send us some recipes, okay?
Happily. And there are over 150 at BelvedereVodka.com.
Okay, maybe send us a link.
The other key thing, though, is that I think, you know, what we've really gotten to a point of a lot more empathy for families with kids, and particularly women on our team, for whom more than 50% of caregiving often falls. And so there's a protocol now. You're to add another 15 minutes onto any given call, because a little one may stream in and out of the room. We've got to stop. We've got to say hello. We've got to give whoever needs a moment to take it. And it's really quite a change from the way we've behaved previously.
And I'm going to ask you, as an advocate for women in the workforce and trying to find flexible solutions, do you think you'll maintain that kind of approach after COVID-19?
I think a lot of things will change. You know, I spend probably 2 weeks out of a month outside of the US. And I think the efficiency of Zoom, boy, do I wish I bought some of that stuff a while ago, has really proven that, you know, some cost savings can come out of my own T&E budget. But I think conditionally, what this whole thing has done is really heightened a sense of humanity and empathy that I don't think people had in general, and not just around issues of gender and childcare, but also, you know, at 7 o'clock here in New York City, when people applaud the healthcare workers and the grocery store workers and all of the people who are keeping the infrastructure working. Yeah, I mean, it just gives me goosebumps every night because there's so much energy behind it. And I think it's a way in which people see more commonality and less hierarchy probably than before.
Thanks. We're going to go to Todd because I know he wanted to comment on this, but it just occurred to me that I didn't say where everybody was. I'm in New Jersey. Bill and Lisa are in New Jersey. Todd, you're in New Jersey, right? Todd's in New Jersey, but office is in New York. Rodney's in the city, in New York City, in the epicenter, and Herbie's in Connecticut, yes?
I'm my home is Westchester County.
Okay, so you're also in the epicenter, but the office is in Connecticut. Okay, so Todd.
Yeah, just to build on some of the comments. I mean, interestingly, you know, the part that everybody's talking about is the frequency and the communication piece of it. And I think one of the things that's been really, I think, eye-opening for me is kind of reducing the formality of communication. And it's really, you know, and Rodney touched on it a little bit when you have. We had a virtual birthday celebration for somebody on our team this morning, and I had my daughter's here with her puppy, so I had the puppy, and we have somebody on our team who has two twins, relatively newborn, and another of our team member who had their baby on the lap. And it's just the barriers that I think you have in an office of everything is kind of compartmentalized between work and home. Those barriers are really starting to break down a bit. And I think people really appreciate that. I actually do this, I send out an email every morning to the whole company that I call Morning Muse, M-U-S-E, with just some random thought or something that caught my attention. And it's never about business. And this morning it was just about my sister-in-law saw something online about people who were kind of replicating art and paintings. And so all of our family did a contest where we were replicating various famous pieces of art. She was Mona Lisa. Happy to send that along. It's pretty good. But it kind of breaks down, I think, the formality of what I think work tends to be. And I think particularly with younger associates on our teams, there's an element of that that makes this very personal, and I think kind of connects you to everybody in the company. So it's just been really interesting to see how the whole dynamic has changed as we're all kind of like working from home. Just last point, if you watch the news, or even last night I caught, I'm not a big country music fan, but all the country music stars were doing all of their songs from their homes. It's just amazing to see all these famous people in their homes. So there's something really amazing about the barriers that are coming down, and how what used to be so kind of compartmentalized is now part of your everyday life. So it's just really interesting.
I agree. One of the country music singers, there was a chime right before he was getting started, and he said, "Oh, sorry, somebody opened the door. That was my alarm."
Yeah, right.
It just really brings everybody onto the same level. I'm going to come to Bill in a minute, and I want to start the conversation on strategy. But before I do that, Todd, your morning muse and your informality, does that stick around after this issue, or do you go back to a bit more formal CEO role?
You know, look, who knows what, I think there are a lot of lessons and things that probably will come along with it. I think what it's all, you know, the interesting thing about the morning news that I would say is I was hearing from a few people, but I didn't really think it was resonating. And then I was talking to our head of HR, and he was telling me that everybody's talking about it and they love seeing how kind of the other side of your life. And so, you know, I think I probably will continue. I don't know if I could do it every day for the rest of my career, but I think there are elements of it that I would like to continue that I think people appreciate.
And Lisa, will that happen, do you think, with the videos and the surveys that you're doing? That will become a part of the new normal?
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of how we operate.
So we're going to talk now about setting strategies, because another thing I learned from this crew is that everybody has both set a near-term strategy, how are we going to get through the next couple of months, and how are we going to address the baddie and the good that comes with this, and then a longer term, what Todd was calling a rebound strategy. How are we going to go back, or if we're not going back, go forward? So maybe I could ask Bill to talk a little bit about that for Ricola, and then we'll go around the virtual room and have folks talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, I was thinking about the Ricola is literally in the middle. It's not an LVMH or GSK, but it's also not a startup. We were startup 85 years ago, and we're on the third generation, but it's still family owned. For the last year, I've been working with my team on a concept that comes out of the military that is that if you have one plan, you have no plan. We always call it PACE, right? Primary, alternate, contingent, and emergency. So you're always looking and saying, I have one thing that I'm going to try and accomplish. I need to have multiple ways in mind about how I could do it. And then under which conditions do I pick which plan? Which allows you to, in the agile world, which is usually more consumer electronics than consumer products oriented. And I think that they're more talking about the speed of the deployment. We're really talking about the speed of decision-making and empowerment. And we've been working within my team on, ironically, never anticipating we would have to do it from our homes, this idea that you meet frequently, coming out of Stanley McChrystal's work on Team of Teams, from what he did with Joint Special Operations Command in Afghanistan. How you work against a network. And if you think about it, to a large degree, the virus is a network, right, in the way that it spreads. And the biggest problem it has, it breaks down our network, our interaction in offices, our interaction with people. So we have to be agile in terms of finding a different way to interact. We do it by video. We do that, it sounds like most people are doing that. I'm doing it every day. We've like a lot of companies, right? The senior leadership would get together once a month, once a week, talk about things and then filter it down. We now are doing these things daily. And often what we'll do is it's a 1 hour phone call and it's a structured information. And we have like 100 people on the call. Huh. So it's giving a broader part of the organization visibility into what the leadership team is talking about and thinking about. And then there's information flowing back and forth by text message and by video chat about the information, because it's such a dynamic, I don't think my boss coined this. I think he stole it, to be frankly, from somebody else. The VUCA world that we live in. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, actually. Which is more than complicated, right? It's and it's ambiguous. It is difficult to be able to predict it. Therefore, your ability to have one plan and one idea and one product and expect to have success with that really. Maybe you can force it through if you're a really big organization. Maybe you can be really, really, really agile if you're a really small startup. We're in the middle, right? So we don't have the large power that we can muscle our way through, and we're too big to be able to make the small turns. So we've been looking at how do we turn that to be an advantage, and so far it's working really well for us. I think whether it's e-commerce or it's home fitness, or this strange time that we're going through has accelerated some things that probably will never go back to normal. They will just speed up on the change, and lots of other things probably will go back to normal.
Okay, that's great. So you addressed what I was going to ask you about, is how does military experience and military learning help deal with the ambiguity and volatility of this situation? I see a lot of questions from students about suitable points, and just want to let you all know that if Rutgers or Lehigh are giving you credit for spending time with us, that's up to them. We're not going to be able to generate that for you. And I hope you will get a lot out of it, even if you don't get credit. And I want to go to Todd, and then maybe whomever else wants to talk about your pillars. The way that you're approaching your plan, and then probably to Lisa, who's thinking about it on a vast global scale. Yeah. Can you do that, Todd?
Yeah, I'll be brief. So we each set off I think what Bill was saying about having a plan, I'm not sure that we yet have all the alternative plans, but we definitely wanted to put something in place and make sure that we were kind of balancing all of the different constituents and all the different objectives that we had. So we have a 5-pillar plan that is probably very similar to what other companies are doing. But number one was about protecting our people, protecting the business long term, and making sure we were really thinking about not only the health aspect of this, but the kind of the future of our employee base as well as our company as a whole. The second pillar was about preservation. I know we are all looking very diligently at cash preservation, especially those of us who don't have revenue right now. Third is about engagement, and it sounds like company engagement for sure, and employee engagement is a big part of it. For us, and Herbie and I are dealing with this in our respective worlds. I have members. I have 500,000 members that we have to engage in, even though they're not able to come into our gym. So we're trying to engage with them and keep them engaged so that when we do reopen, they come back to us. Lisa, you mentioned about rebound. Obviously, everybody is planning for the inevitable opportunity to reopen. And I think, to Bill's point, how the world is going to look when businesses start to come back online, everybody's, guess is as good as anyone else's. So you have to have lots of different contingencies there, but rebound is a major factor. And then at some point, as we get to, whatever, the new normal will be, how do you then accelerate your business and get back on track? So that's kind of been our approach, which I'm guessing is, somewhat generic to what many companies are doing, but really having those vertical areas so that you can have people attacking each of those is really critical right now.
Thanks. Lisa, from a GSK standpoint, I know you're also thinking about what the future holds, but also trying to make consumers happy and retailers happy today. So can you talk a little bit about the strategy of today and what you're thinking about going forward?
Yeah, and we definitely have, sort of the now, next, future strategies underway. I think to Bill's point, in some of those cases, we've used, the command center, getting the decisions quickly in and in a steering approach. And those are things really related to colleague safety and things that are really acute and imminent. And we've used it for that. We've also applied that in our supply continuity. And so we have very much, a crisis team overseeing supply at this time. These, for our size organization, are different and distinct teams for the most part. And then we also have teams that are now starting to be about, future, because we do expect, as has been mentioned, a whole new set of norms to come out of COVID, and to be really thinking about, which of those are going to be fundamental shifts and changes, and starting teams actioning against what the new needs to look like, and how do we prepare for that, because we're managing in it. We're in the storm, all of us right now, and but we're going to quickly be out of it. I think for perspective, the thing that was amazing when you're in any of these command centers, Bill, I love the fact that you had 4, at least 4 strategies. I will say, we would have 4 scenarios planned, and we might exhaust all of those in a 24-hour period, because that's how dynamic the situation is. And you're really encountering just new after new after new. And I think just being really, having the right mindset, having people that are positive minded and solution oriented with you on that journey is incredibly important. In terms of the teams that you need to form when you're managing through some of these things and the strategies that you need to apply.
Lisa, you're absolutely right. One of the things that happens when you ask people for a pace, when you ask people for 4 plans, is that they're thinking in contingencies. So they're thinking, if this happens, I'll do this. If something different happens, I'll do this. So they've changed their mindset, and therefore they're much more agile in unanticipated, right? A 5th, the 6th, and unanticipated. They're still thinking in terms of contingency. What we found was that if you give people a plan, they get a comfort level sticking to the plan, and then they try and convince themselves that that plan will work instead of looking and saying what would work better. So I agree, it's about mindset more than 4, 6, 8, 10.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Rodney, because Rodney and Lisa both talked about that positive mindset. And Todd's Daily Muse is kind of that too. that how important is that in terms of the people that get to lead in times of crisis?
Well, I think it's incredibly important because fear can be so paralyzing. And in the case of scenario plays, you need to ideate. You need to fundamentally be hopeful that there is a path to move forward. So we have our own kind of Belvedere specific construct that embodies many of the ideas that have just been articulated. Secure, meaning secure our people, especially in the distillery itself. We did not want to get people to feel like they're putting their health on the lines to continue to produce products. So we moved to an A-B rotation where we cut the staff in half to minimize their own exposure inside the distillery itself. And, we take the temperatures. We've been doing this for about 5 weeks now. Everybody who comes to the distillery, vendors cannot come onto the distillery campus. We've figured out how to really secure the perimeters around it. Support, generosity is the other key thing. Poland very closely regulates alcohol, especially vodka. It's the first country in the world to appellate vodka the way France or US or Italy appellates wine. So we produce 70% and 96% proof alcohol for hospitals. And you cannot imagine, we have an entire team dedicated to working through the bureaucracy and avoiding the excise tax because it's super complex. But it's great that the country has that security. The third of the four things is segue. Unfortunately for us, we were in the process of launching a new campaign. Most people don't know that Belvedere is and has always been all natural because it's been appellated by Poland. So there's never been sugar, there's never been additives. It's made in a real distillery. And other people don't know that all vodka is gluten-free. The distillation process removes the gluten. So we had this whole campaign teed up to inform people, and then this happened. So the needs of Germany or Italy in particular are very different from the needs of the United States. In Italy, 96% of the consumption is in restaurants, clubs, bars. They don't drink things other than wine at home. Where here in US, about 70% of our business is retail. So the dynamics are different. So the teams have to have very specific, country-specific contingency plans for how we come out of this. And that leads to the fourth thing, Superstruck, which is building on top of a foundation. So there's recognition our world has changed. There are viral parties, there's e-commerce and e-retail where people hadn't felt comfortable about it with alcohol in particular in many countries. Some places are allowing restaurants and bars to provide you drinks. If you drive up, you can take it away, you just can't come in. So many of these aspects of the changed landscape will persist. And how are we going to be a part of it as part of the whole Superstructure exercise?
Thank you. So we have the R acronyms and the S acronyms and the N acronyms, but all really helpful. And then what was yours called? PACE and the VUCA from Bill. So we'll jot all that down. And as you know, this is being recorded. We only have a few minutes left together. We have a couple questions which I'll try to get to. Any questions we don't get to, we'll ask the panel their thoughts and we'll email them out as a follow-up. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I think this is relevant to all of us, is brands and the changing role of brands now during the Corona scare and then after. So if I could ask each of you to just spend 30 seconds talking to me about what you think is going on with brands. Is it a good thing and is it going to be lasting? And maybe I'll start with Herbie, who has both the media and the subscription kind of background.
Yeah, I mean, from a brand perspective, I think it really does come down to knowing your consumer, and what are the needs and the problems that those consumers are looking to your brand in particular to solve. So I think brands are going to continue to be very important. Their importance may actually grow depending on the category that you're in. And if you understand those needs and you can solve those problems for your consumer and communicate to them in a relevant way for that business, it becomes really important. And just to touch on real quick on the strategy question that you had before, really, I mean, I think for everybody here, I think I've heard cash flow is number one. It is for us. I started off the panel by discussing that. working capital. And then another big thing is also learning from past crises. So 2008 as a key learning period where there were a lot of industries in flux. There were some like ours, I would say the sharing economy, Uber, Airbnb, who were kind of puttering along and doing well. But then actually the '08 financial crisis kind of, exploded that category following that. So how did they take advantage of that? What are the learnings from that? And then that impacts all of the development timelines as well, whether it's people, personnel, business, operations, everything should be dictated from there going forward. And that impacts teams, of course, in many ways. And that's been touched on here by everybody on the team. But back to then the brands plays a vital role in all of that. To kind of address the needs of the consumer.
Thank you. My perspective, and I'm seeing this in my own behavior, I want to go with a brand I trust. No fooling around when I don't have a lot of time to shop and when I can't afford to make a mistake. So that's me. Lisa, do you want to jump in on this topic?
Sure. I mean, Lisa, that's what the data is indicating to us as well as it relates to health and wellness categories right now. We've seen a bit of a swing back away from some private label and back into brands for that very reason. They do trust it. They've come to rely on it, and now they know it might really matter, and they want to make sure they've got those brands in their cabinet. I think the other thing that we're trying to do, and I think all brands have a responsibility to do, is you've got to recheck if you're contextually relevant. We've created communications that were not with this in mind. If you're featuring an airplane in your ad, that's probably not relevant anymore, right? And you need to get to things that are, and you need to be, I would just say, really in tune to the tone that brands need to be taking on right now, because consumers are also really vocalizing support for those that do, and there's some backlash against those that are missing it.
Yeah, we're not going to have time for me to show some slides, but I asked you all your thoughts on brands before, and I put one together. We'll send them out. But one of the things that I was struck by is there are definitely tone-deaf brands, and there are brands that are really listening. So back to your point of listening. And I just saw yesterday the new 2020 Olympics logo. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's 2020, and then the spelled out word one next to it, O-N-E. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to remind people that we're going a year later, but we'll be together as one in some way. We don't know what way as we do it. I don't know who was doing that marketing, but I thought it was good. Anybody else have a comment on brands? I have two more questions for you all.
One thing.
Okay, Todd, then Rodney. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, just briefly. Look, I think brands are more important. I don't want to say for every category, but this is about life and death. I mean, when you really think about it, especially in a product that you're either ingesting or a place where there's real intimacy, like a fitness center, there's a high stakes game here, and getting it wrong even one time from a consumer standpoint could mean life and death. Maybe not to them, but to somebody in there connecting, whether it's family member or friend. So I do think that there's the level of trust and confidence, and we heard this from the brands that we're studying in Asia, is everybody wants to feel confident that they could go back to their regular life. And that's where brands start to come in, because there's a history, there's a commitment, there's an understanding. And I think it's going to be really vital in the coming, at least months and maybe years.
Thanks. Rodney, did you want to add something?
The only quick build is, my mom is 88, and she called me about a week and a half ago, and she said, it just struck me, you're a discretionary brand and a discretionary company, and no one really needs your products. So
thanks,
I
Mom.
hope your future stuff. And I said to her, Mom, that is true, that we are a discretionary product, but the key, I think, to luxury brands in particular is an expression of generosity. And LVMH segueing to actually producing hand sanitizer out of Dior and Vuitton was unthinkable, before a situation like this. But being able to connect with a set of values that the consumer holds dear and showing this level of empathy, moving away from being aloof but much more accessible is critical.
Thanks. I agree with that. And I'm looking at the questions that we've been given, and I have a couple left. One of them was to me specifically about what's going on with our business and how will we sustain going forward. And then more broadly to all of you, same question. So for Luminations, we're a team of remote workers, and we're able to help lots of companies right now because we've been doing this for 17 years. What do I predict in the future? You know, I think we're going to see some economic fallout from all of this, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later, and that will impact all of us in some way. I hope that we can find new ways to be relevant and sustain the business, but frankly and honestly and transparently, second half is probably going to be tough for a lot of businesses. And I believe the recovery will be faster than it was after 2008 because there's so much money pouring into the economy for many sectors, but not fast, just faster, not 3 years, but also not 6 months. So that's my perspective, and it's only mine. Does anybody else want to share kind of what they're thinking? And again, I will encourage you all to recognize these are just people who are seeing variables the same way you all are. Thoughts?
I would just go back to that learning from the sharing, you know, what happened in 08, which like, that's one example, the sharing economy. And, you know, there's others out there of like you said, there's going to be shifts. There's going to be movement across different industries. Consumer behavior is definitely going to change as quickly as coronavirus hit us. It's definitely not going away as quickly. So there will be a new normal, new habits are going to be formed. And back to the brand discussion, people's values are really what's going to matter, you know, and the choices that they're making at every step along the way.
And I have optimism. I think this is a horrible time, but it's creating incredible opportunities. I saw an article that said that telemedicine, which had taken more than a decade to start to take hold, had in a matter of a month done leapfrog 10 years worth of issues it was facing, mostly because the regulatory environment opened up. As you said, now you can ship alcohol. Things change, and maybe that's not going to go back to the old way. So benefits for us. You all saw that coming out of the military, they can now sanitize masks. So if they can't make enough masks, they're shipping in the sanitizers so people can get their masks back safely. So lots of great ingenuity. And I heard about the dicing.
And Lisa, I think that your point is seeing opportunity, the same as in terms of contingency planning. When you draw up one plan, you have one option. When you draw up 5 or 6 options and you say, under which conditions would I use which plans, you're already changing your mindset to that. I think the same thing is true when you look at something. You can either wake up in the morning and say, today's going to be a bad day. I wonder how many ventilators Governor Cuomo needs. Or you can wake up in the morning and you can say, there is going to be a way to make this better. And we're going to clean these, or we're going to share them. And I think from a business mindset, right, there are going to be some avenues that close, but there are going to be other avenues that open. And those people who look for opportunities and find ways to meet consumers' needs are going to be successful.
I think that's a great sentiment. I want to make sure I give others an opportunity to talk about their glimpse into the future. Anybody else want to talk about what they think? Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa, I would just share, I think I've been incredibly impressed with the amount of collaboration across companies in order to solve bigger problems. And I hope that some of that carries forward as well. It was a little bit forced by the conditions and sometimes the laws, but I do think that you'll see a real, everybody's getting the benefit of doing that, and how fast things have been able to be experimented, be explored. I work a lot in drugs, but they're breaking down all the drug paradigms. So I do think in terms of better solutions, available quicker, in more hands, and others building on them, I think we will see a much more collaborative type of approach to problems as well.
No, that's a great point. Thanks. Todd?
Well, look, the future is everybody's guess, right, at this point of what's going to change. But, I think the reality of it is for brands like us, and we're still relatively small, I mean, we see it as a huge opportunity. I mean, you know, when you think about the realities that every single brand in our respective categories is kind of starting now from the same place, right? Regardless of how big you are. And so it gives everybody a chance to kind of jump in and take huge competitive advantage. So this idea of a rebound strategy and getting out of the gate more competitively advantaged and faster than your competition, I just think it represents so much opportunity. And I think we're seeing that. I mean, I haven't seen this much creativity in our company, and I've been here for 8 years. I've seen more creativity in the last 3 weeks than I've seen in 8 years. And I think it's out of necessity, and people are forced out of their paradigms. And I think that ultimately is going to be hopefully what enables some companies to leapfrog versus other companies to continue to do more of the same.
That is very helpful, and that was actually one of our questions. What have you guys seen that surprised you? The collaboration, the creativity, the optimism, the ingenuity.
I can offer one more bill. From my vantage point is transparency. You know, there was a belief that, you know, the atelier, I mean, how you create products is supposed to have some mystique to it. But in this situation, people need to know what's going on. They have more confidence when they actually see the entire process, understand all of the ingredients. And, you know, you have fashion brands that have made this pivot. And I'm sure in our world, in terms of wine and spirits, will make that pivot too.
Excellent. So we're going to close with any advice that you guys would like to share that we haven't gotten to today for our audience of 100+ folks. And also anything that I haven't asked you to talk about that you wanted to talk about. We have just about 3 minutes left. So maybe I'll start with Bill. Any words of wisdom for the group, and then we'll put up our takeaway slide at the end. And anything that you wish that I would have asked you to talk about that I didn't.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think from a words of wisdom perspective, like most of us are leaders in a situation where we couldn't possibly control things even if we tried to. You know, as I said, we've been working with my team on this concept of team of teams. What happens how much can we unleash the productivity of our team to be creative if we get out of their way, set a clear outcome, and ask them to think more broadly and more agile? I think that this opportunity to rebound calls on everybody who's a leader, right? Double down on the growth agenda. Don't double down on the control agenda.
Okay, because we can't control anyway.
Can't control it anyway.
Lisa, any words of wisdom?
Okay.
You know, I would, I think, offer that you really need to go back to that first priority, and you really need to be there for the people. And as a leader, sometimes that requires you to get through your own things that you're dealing with faster, and to understand that you've got to come out of that in order to be there for others, and likewise, you know, for the leaders that work with you. And I think it's not easy. Not every day is a good day. I think being human and being real about that, but also being one who's going to, you know, take a positive mindset that you mentioned, Lisa, and just continue to go forward because others need it and are depending on it.
Thanks. Todd.
I think Herbie, go ahead, Herbie.
No, I just had a just quick build. Yeah, it's about positive thinking, positive mindset, you know, making sure the team feels that, knows that. And then really importantly, tied to a lot of what Bill has said, just to take an action kind of stance. Don't let, you know, there's things that are going to happen to us that are uncontrollable, but at the same time, have the various plans, have scenarios laid out, and take action, you know, like test things out, try things out. Maybe easier in our organization than it is in some of yours, but it can still be done. And that's important.
And we're all learning how to behave differently. Todd, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I think, you know, all of us have been leaders for a long time and have probably done a lot of the same things, which is one of the reasons we've had, you know, success in our various careers, and we've replicated the things that have enabled us to work. And now some of the principles are the same, but our behaviors have to change dramatically. And so I think the idea of being flexible in your leadership style and being more kind of decentralized and letting people do things, I think is a change for many of us. But I think it's critical to our success right now. So that's my last comment.
Flexibility. Rodney, do you want to close us?
Well, the only thing I'd add, because I agree with the comments that have been made, is a sense of empathy as a leader. You know, it's easier said than done, but because we fall into these traps of the demands that are placed on us, the systems and the structures. But you know, there was an old McKinsey study of about 20 years ago, the CPG innovation world, where they found that good ideas can come from anywhere. They could come from the mailroom. They could come from outside vendors. And so embracing and really understanding where others are coming from in the organization, I think is empowering to the group, but really helpful to us as leaders.
Thank you. And I will say the conversation for me, extremely helpful, extremely enlightening. I hope you all felt the same way. I'm seeing some really nice feedback from other leaders online right now. We'll send out the link to the recording. We'll send out the slides that we didn't show. And I am so grateful to have had an hour with this amazing panel. So thank you.
Thank you,
Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Healthy. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.